it's me, Miss H again, back with another video lesson. This one is for the Four Seasons, Spring Movement 1 by Vivaldi. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there for practice this week. I had to go home because I was feeling very crummy, and I'm recording this in my house with my 3 cats. So if you hear random sounds, it's probably my smallest cat running around like a crazy person, because he is. So this is our composer for this week. This is Vivaldi. He was a priest, and he also had really bright red hair. In this portrait, he's wearing a white wig with like baby powder in it because that was the popular thing to have your picture taken in. For whatever reason, they didn't like their normal hair. They had to have this white, poofy wig. But anyway, he was a priest. He worked at an orphanage that only had girls, which means these girls had lost their parents for whatever reason. Back then, their parents probably got sick and couldn't take care of their daughters anymore. But Vivaldi, being the mastermind that he was, because he was really stinking smart, he took the pieces that he wrote while still being a priest and still being very simple with his life, but he took his knowledge that he knew and put it to good use. He took all of his pieces and he performed them, and he had other people perform them, and all of the money that he got, whether because he was the performer or he was the composer, so he got some money because it was his music, he gave it back to the orphanage so that way the girls could have money to better their lives and not be stuck in poverty and have to go out into the world and not be ready for the world. He made it where the girls were ready for the world. Back then it was very popular for girls to play instruments. They had to do homey tasks. So playing an instrument was one of those things. They weren't allowed to go to school, so they went to school for music. They weren't allowed to go to school for math, science, and reading. So he also taught all of these girls how to play their instruments. And he acquired the money so that way he could get the instruments for these girls and their learning. And he even had a choir within the orphanage of the girls that didn't want to play instruments. And they would perform with the orchestra. And all of the money that was raised would go back into the orphanage. They participated in their own fundraisers to better their lives, which was just awesome. So he's really well known as a solo violinist, meaning he played the violin. And he made sure he wrote pieces for him. He knew he was awesome. So he wrote pieces to show off just how awesome he was. So we are talking about the 4 seasons. So we know the 4 seasons. It's winter, fall, summer, spring. Okay? He has a piece for each season. So he has something that is the 4 seasons really big, fall, with a bunch of movements. He has the 4 seasons really big, summer, with a bunch of movements. The 4 seasons, winter, with a bunch of movements. Thankfully, though, we just have to worry about one season, that season being spring, which thankfully and hopefully is on its way soon. So there's 4 seasons, so there are 4 concertos. A concerto is just a small symphony. It's not as big, it's not as fancy. It doesn't last as long. It doesn't usually have as many instruments. And Vivaldi wrote a lot of program music. So the music is supposed to help tell a story, like how In the Hall of the Mountain King tells a story of a guy that has to run away from the trolls. This tells a story, but this one's not so much a word story, it's a visual story. So this is telling you the story of how it is right now for us. It's kind of cold and sometimes it'll be warm because nature is starting to wake back up. But during spring, we also normally have a lot of thunderstorms. And so there's a section that's loud and bombastic, and it's supposed to be a thunderstorm. But eventually the thunderstorms go away and nature comes back out, and it's still lovely and pretty. Movement 1 highlights all of that, so that way each of the movements afterwards can go a little bit more into each part. So there's going to be the sounds of birds chirping, there's going to be the sounds of birds chirping, rushing rivers, and like I said, thunderstorms. And it's just all going to come together and it's going to sound like the season of spring. So on our screen, we have the picture of our music map, and it just spells spring. It shows you in the S, it's got the flowers, it has birds. That's a very naturey sounding section. In the P and the R, we see fish and seahorses because that's going to sound like a water section, or it's supposed to mimic the sounds of water. You can see in the I and G, there are a bunch of violins, violas, cellos, and basses, but there are also lightning bolts because that's going to be our thunder section. And then when we get to G, we have butterflies along with those flowers because we go back to nature and the thunderstorms have gone away and everything can come back out and be beautiful and lovely. I do want to point out this word right here, tutti. Tutti just means all or everybody. So that means everybody is playing, because this is written to have a couple of instruments being a solo, so the violins, and then there's an entire orchestra as like their backup singers. So think of a popular musician, a popular singer, and normally they're the one, they have a mic right in front of them, it's all about them, but they still have a band behind them. Sometimes they have the people that do the little ooh doo-wops behind them. I might be showing my age, even though I'm only 26, but still. The solo people get to be the main stars, but every now and then there's going to be time where they play with everybody because they can share.
The Four Seasons, Spring, Movement 1, by Vivaldi.
So, as always, we are going to talk about the title and the piece and everything else like that. So, first, the title is The Four Seasons, Spring, Movement 1. This is probably the longest title we're going to have, so I'm perfectly fine just calling it Spring, Movement 1. Now, our composer for this piece is Vivaldi. Our tempo is kind of in the middle, so we're going to do another one of those in the middle circles. It's in the middle, so it's like a medium tempo. Our performing group is strings, meaning it's only string instruments that play. Even in the background part, it's still only strings. And the form is A, B, B, C, C, A. Now the vocab words that I have for you, one of them is dynamics. Dynamics are just the louds and softs. We've talked about that. Forte and piano. Another word is tutti. Looks really funny. It's Italian. Most of our funny words in music are Italian. Tutti just means all or everyone. And our last word is really fancy because it's two words technically. Concerto Grosso. A concerto just means there's one solo instrument or more solo instruments, and then they have background singers behind them. Grosso just tells us how many background singers they're going to have. No, they're not gross, they're not nasty. They're just going to be really big. So they have a lot of background singers or background players with them while they're doing this piece. As always, look at the description box because it's going to have links to my website and the Google Doc that's going to have more fancy schmancy stuff for all of this. But anyway, until next time I see you, bye!